In this video, I'm going to give you 7 of my best guppy breeding tips that I've learned over the years to breed guppies better, faster, and make the process a lot more easy. Starting off with tip number 1 is to mimic summer conditions. Guppies typically breed during the summer where there's more sunlight than usual, and you can actually mimic this by keeping the lighting on longer. So if you have your light on normally for about 8 to 10 hours, you could possibly extend it to around 12 hours. That way you kind of mimic the summer parameters and the guppy's gonna know that it's breeding season. The other part to this is to raise the temperature because obviously during summertime, water temperatures rise. Raising the temperature is also going to boost their metabolism, which in simple terms is how guppies use food to get energy. I would say the best temperature to raise for breeding guppies is around 80 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's a good range to go for. So by mimicking summer season, turning the light on for longer hours, and also raising the temperature is one of the best ways to trigger breeding in guppies. My second tip is to keep guppies in a 2-to-1 breeding ratio. This basically means for every 2 females you want 1 male in the tank. The reason for that is you want a good ratio for fish to breed. If you have too many males per female, that's going to cause a lot of stress to the female. The male is going to constantly be chasing her around. What's going to end up happening is there's just going to be no breeding. You could have a lot of females per male, but just don't have a lot of males per female. It actually encourages breeding this way because the females could take turns mating with a male, and it's going to reduce aggression as well. Female guppies breed really often. You don't really need that many males to get them to breed. So I would say like 1 to 2 males per 5 to 6 females would be ideal. My third tip for breeding guppies is to monitor breeding cycles. You probably haven't heard this before, but this is something that I've used to accurately predict when the guppies are going to breed. What you're going to do is whenever you notice your guppies breeding, you're going to remember the time that they did. Say that they bred in the beginning of March, you're going to keep that in mind. Now, this is going to help you accurately predict when they're going to breed next because guppies breed approximately once every 30 to 40 days. So if they bred in the beginning of March, you could expect them to release fry again sometime in early April. This is going to help you predict when the guppies will breed. This is a great method, especially if you're tracking a certain guppy in the tank that you're looking after. And it's hard to be exact, like there's no exact timing like when they will breed. It's not going to be exactly 30 days or 40 days later, but it gives you a rough idea. You'll know when to look out for the signs of breeding. Basically, you're just tracking when the female guppies are breeding, and you're going to be able to more accurately predict drop dates more accurately, and also time everything better. My next tip is to add as many fast-growing plants as possible, and there's a few reasons for this. First of all, plants are extremely beneficial for any fish. I recommend keeping live plants in any aquarium. They help keep the water clean, they act as a natural filter, and they're really going to do a lot in keeping the tank healthy. This is especially true with guppies since guppies produce a ton of waste. The reason I recommend fast-growing plants is because fast growers such as hornwort, guppy grass, duckweed, stuff like that, these plants are super duper good at soaking up nitrates in the tank. I'll add affiliate links for some of these plants in the description and comments. There's also a code you can apply to get a discount, so be sure to check that out. If you have a group of guppies and they're constantly breeding, you need to make sure that the nitrate levels are being kept down and that there's not an ammonia spike, because even though the baby guppies are tiny, they still produce a lot of bioload. Live plants are great for soaking up the excess nutrients. They also help clean the water, so it's going to help with the water changes as well. Some plants that I'm going to recommend straight up are guppy grass, hornwort, duckweed, salvinia, java moss, jungle val. These are fantastic plants for your guppies. Another great benefit of plants is that once the baby guppies are born, they provide excellent shelter for the fry. Especially if you have a ton of plants that are fast growers, they're going to be able to cover up the tank in no time. My fifth tip for breeding guppies is to keep them in a well set up tank. Guppies originate from tropical waters. They're gonna like temperatures that are on the higher range, usually 75 degrees and above. You also want to make sure that the flow isn't too high, so I would recommend something like a sponge filter or at least some kind of filter that doesn't have really high flow. The baby guppies are going to be super sensitive. You don't want the high flow to constantly be disturbing the fry. Sponge filters are great because they're simple and they work really well with guppies. I did it with a hang-on back, but I made sure that the flow was low by creating this thing that I attached where it just reduced the flow. The other thing to consider is the filter intake. So a hang-on back filter is going to have an intake, and sometimes the intake could be pretty strong for the babies, which can potentially suck them up. So you want to make sure that the intake flow is low. For hang-on back filters, I recommend getting a pre-filter sponge, which makes it more like a sponge filter with how it soaks up water. Also, this is probably the most important thing if you want the fry to grow well, is to provide good lighting. For baby guppies to grow and develop properly, they need a lot of light, good light, to develop their spines and to maintain their growth. Ideally, you'll want the lights on for at least 6 hours. You also want to keep them in tanks of at least 10 gallons. Again, guppies are super fast breeders. They're going to have tens and hundreds of babies in no time, so you have to be prepared. You might start off with just 4 or 5, but it's very likely that within a month or two you could have hundreds. And a 10 gallon is really the minimum for guppies. I would not go any lower than that. Make sure you keep your guppies in a tropical tank, 10 gallons or above, with something like a sponge filter. It's also important to keep the ammonia levels low, but guppies are pretty hardy in general. They don't need that much. You don't have to really worry about the pH levels and all that GH, KH stuff. They really don't require a lot for breeding. They're one of the easiest aquarium fish to breed. They're the first fish I ever bred. As long as you keep them in good conditions with a decent tank size, they're going to do perfectly fine. My next tip on this list is to eliminate any potential predators. This is really important if you want to breed guppies and raise the fry, because if you have a lot of predators in the tank before the guppies breed, it's going to make it really hard to breed because it's constantly going to be stressed about the surroundings and it's going to be delayed and there's going to be all sorts of issues. When baby guppies are born, they're born incredibly small, which makes them a great target for almost any fish. Even some medium-sized fish like black neon tetras or harlequin rasboras, even the parents themselves are going to go after baby guppies. One method is to add a ton of hiding spaces to provide cover. You could also move the newborn guppies to a separate tank or a breeder box, but in order to keep the majority of fry, you want to eliminate any predators. Another way to go is to move the female to a different tank for it to breed, and once the babies are born, you can move the female back. Just remember to get rid of as many predators as possible if you want the majority of fry to survive. My 7th tip for breeding guppies is to feed well, and feed a bit more than usual because, first of all, female guppies eat a lot, especially during breeding. You want to make sure to feed a varied diet, so feed them stuff like flakes, live foods, if you could get them, pellets, fruits, all that kind of stuff. You really want to make sure to feed them well. Feeding your guppies well and a bit more than usual when they're about to breed is great because basically you're letting the fish know that there's an abundance of food in the tank and that the fry are going to have a ton of food when they get out. So it's actually really helpful in breeding guppies. Feed a bit more than usual and also feed a wide range of different foods. I'm not saying you should overfeed, but definitely feed a bit extra than usual. Feeding your guppies is really important. It's one of the main factors that help determine the success of your breeding process, so you want to make sure to feed them well. Some really easy choices are homemade stuff, so stuff like small pieces of bananas, apples, egg yolk is one of my favorites. I talk about it all the time. And these are like really easy stuff to get your hands on. And they're also very beneficial, so make sure you feed them well. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe down below for more videos like these. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.